just a simple, okay, so that's working. Okay, we've got audio working here. This is kind of funky. We'll get this set up. We'll start in a second here. And how's that going? Hey, looks like that's going. So looks like we are doing well here. Show some audio in a minute on our test, and we will start at the top of the hour. Always fun to do these kinds of things. All right, all the tests are there. We have audio. A little funky with Wirecast, but we will chat to that. Good to have everybody inside. We will start up at the top of the hour, which is in about a minute here. Good to see a bunch of you on board. This is fun. Glad to see that the text message came through. And having a good time. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for the... I'm glad you can hear me here. We are broadcasting at 720p, so if you want to... upgrade yourself, go ahead and feel to do that, but this should be a ton of fun. While we're waiting for this to start, go ahead and introduce yourself, and say who you are, and we will go from there. Always fascinating to look at these stats, watch these things go from there. Glad you're welcome, Dave. Glad you're looking forward to this as well. I'm looking forward to this as well. I'm not quite even sure what is going to happen today, but it should be fascinating to watch. So with that said and done, let's get rid of that. And actually we'll put that there as well. Save ourselves a little bit of bandwidth. And with that said and done, I think it's time to go. Hey everybody, welcome. This is Paul Colligan, and this is How to Podcast for free on iTunes. We're going to be heading up a bunch of things. What's interesting is, honestly, when I started this idea, when I started this concept for the event, I didn't know it was going to be National Podcast Day. I didn't realize it was going to be National Podcast Day. But lo and behold, check this out. You know, it's National Podcast Day. And if we fit over here to the screen, share that with you. It's National Podcast Day, and that's pretty cool. And I don't know, Synergy or the universe or whatever it was that put this together, but gosh darn it, very, very awesome, very, very cool to be part of Podcasting Day. And so what I thought I'd do is just first give a shout out to these guys for making Podcast Day happen. It's very, very cool. It has been a ton of fun, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of it. So we did a couple of things in conjunction with Podcast Day, and we will chat about that. But I'm looking at the stats. More and more of you are coming on. Some of you signed up for the text messaging system, and some of you asked how I did that. I will be sharing that inside of this presentation. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to cover. I got a bunch of ideas I want to cover, but the one thing I really want to cover here is just this simple reality and the simple promise here that, well, let's put this right here. Got a question? Submit it, and we'll try to answer it here. There are a bunch of you in the chat room. I've got some things I want to cover. I've got some notes. I've got some things that I'm doing. But gosh darn it, if this goes in a different direction, I'll be thrilled to take it in a different direction, and we should have some fun with that, and we should get some, I don't know, we should get some things done here. So this is the show. I'm going to give it about another minute here before we start deep on the content, but it's fun to see everybody inside. It's fun to see the control room, see who's joining us, who isn't joining us, what the numbers are, that type of thing. Always fun. So a bunch of people have introduced themselves. Actually, I want to speak to them. Boy, we got a whole bunch here. Fred Castaneda. Fred, thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure to have you inside. Steve Stewart, welcome, buddy. Dave Lee, thank you for making this happen, man. Boston Red, thank you for having Steve Stewart again. Dave Lee, Steve Lewart, Ian Smith, David Lee, Special Ed IEP. Hey, Yale, welcome. Steve Lee, Daniel J. Lewis, Audacity Podcast. Awesome. Fun stuff. Very, very, very cool. Okay, with that said and done, let's get back to the content. So I promised today that we would chat about how to podcast. And before we chat about how to podcast, I want to set up just a little bit about who I am and what I've been doing so you can understand the angle that I come to these things on. And so I'm going to show you some slides from my past here. So the first thing I want to show you here is a book called The Business Podcasting Bible. I wrote this thing, as you can see, it came out in 2006. And one of the things I did in the Podcasting Bible was I designed a podcasting book that had no screenshots. And one of the things I did no screenshots in the book was because I knew things were going to change. I knew things were going to change quickly. And I knew what would happen would be the second I had an older version of iTunes or something like that, we'd be in a situation where people would go, oh, that's no good because, you know, the screenshot doesn't work or that type of thing. So what I did was I built a book about podcasting that had no screenshots in it. But what's funny is, and I didn't see this coming, you know, nearly 10 years later for this book, it's still being bought. I get no royalties from this one anymore. It's a long story. Still being bought. I'm thrilled. It's still good. One of the fun things about it is the simple fact that everything I said in there, you know, and I was careful with what I said and that kind of thing, but everything said in there has stayed true and been true. And so what's been funny is I've gotten people who've picked it up, who have purchased it, who have been emailing me things like, hey, I bought your book, but you forgot to talk about the iPhone. Well, the funny thing is, this thing was written, you know, years before we even knew that the iPhone was a possibility. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And so I've been in podcasting since the beginning. I've been the key guy behind, and Steve, I see your question about the fading. We'll chat about the tech. I might even share all of this with you. It might be kind of fun. Don't worry, we'll chat about that. I've got these questions. We'll answer as much of them as we can. But I've been podcasting. I did a bunch of podcasts at the beginning. I did a course called Podcast Secrets. I know at least one of my students is in here, and it's a pleasure to see the students. I did podcast tools. I did the Profitable Podcast Show. I did Marketing Online Live. I did Internet Marketing This Week. I did a whole bunch of podcasts, and then I stuck back a little bit to be the secret weapon behind a number of podcasts. And I worked for shows. Joe Polish, 10X Talk. I became the executive producer behind that show. That's one of the ones I'm allowed to talk about. Did some other podcasts with people, some behind-the-scenes stuff. What was really fun was I was able to take Brendan Burchard earlier this year, actually. I was able to take the boy to number one in all of iTunes, which was a conscientious, very targeted effort. A little bit later this year, I took JJ Virgin, the health nutritionist gal. She's absolutely amazing. I got her number 7, and we're going to try that again, and we're going to go from there. Oh, Daniel J. Lewis just said he doesn't have Wirecast, too expensive. Oh, Daniel, I'm going to fix you up with that, my friend. I'm going to set you up with that. Daniel, I'm using a free version of Wirecast. Yes, a free version. So anyway, I've been involved with podcasting for a long time. I recently launched a course to a small group earlier this year. We've seen some fun success with that. And then some other things that we've done or other things that I've done, I guess, is I launched a couple of podcasts. One of the podcasts I launched was a podcast called The Podcast Report. And there you can see it at Stitcher. We're having a lot of fun with the Podcast Report. The idea of the Podcast Report was to examine the issues in podcasting that aren't being examined elsewhere. We've got amazing people like Daniel J. Lewis here in the audience. It's people who are teaching just phenomenal stuff when it comes to podcasting, but it's not the deeper questions. And so as you can see, I did a bit of a controversial one this week. It was kind of fun. Is there money in making podcasting complicated? There is. There are some people who are, you know, making podcasting complicated for a living. And, well, Yeah, you don't need to. Podcasting's not that complicated, and we will be chatting about that a little bit later during this presentation. Some other stuff we did with the podcast report was why the future of media is experience. Actually, this is a presentation I did before a group. Boy, if you want to explain podcasting to a key group, take a look at this, see what I did there. iOS 8 is a gift to podcasters. You know, I got Rob Walsh from Libsyn to chat about what Podcast 8 means, that kind of thing. The YouTube broadcast, a whole bunch of stuff. And had a lot of fun with that podcast, and a lot of you are listeners to it, and you're having a great time, and I deeply, deeply appreciate that. Podcast report, we've got a Facebook page. Would love some followers over at the Facebook page. Not a bunch of them. I know, yet another Facebook page to follow, but the fact of the matter is, you know, it is what it is. I have a personal Facebook page as well at facebook.com/Paul Colligan fan, or you can go to Facebook or paulcolligan.com/Facebook. One of the things, actually, I'll give you this tip. A lot of people forget that they don't need to market the other guy. A lot of people go, oh, you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/ampersand my name, or facebook.com/this, or youtube.com/this. One thing you can do that's really, really cool is, and it's easy, there's free plugins for WordPress that do this, is, you know, I'm at Twitter at paulcolligan.com/Twitter, marketing me. You can do the same. I'm at Amazon at paulcolligan.com/Amazon, marketing me. You can do the same. I'm at YouTube, paulcolligan.com/YouTube, marketing me. You can do the same. And I definitely recommend this approach. So if you want to find out where I am online, paulcolligan.com/the social network that, you know, provides what it is that we're doing. So, all right. Where are we at here with my notes? This is really free form. Kind of fun to see all the notes in here. I will answer things as they come through. So I've got that. I've also got a show called Thinking Out Loud. And I built Thinking Out Loud to be my experiment center, to be my, how do we describe this? This is the podcast where I'm going to test to see how far I can take podcasting. Some of you realize that, some of you haven't. And what I want to do tonight, I thought this would be fun, and technically this could get me into some trouble. Last time I did this before, it blew up in my face, so I'm not necessarily guaranteeing it's not going to do the same. But I thought I would record an episode of Thinking Out Loud live in front of you guys, so that you can see how simple it is to do a podcast. And so we're going to record just a short episode and have some fun with that, and we'll go from there. So what I've got in front of me is I've got my iPad, and I've got some notes that I took for tonight. And in speaking to podcasting and what podcasting is, I want to make sure that we cover all my notes. And podcasting is three things. This is important. And if you want to write this down, or if you want to take notes, or if somebody wants to put it inside of the commentary, that's great. It's three things. It's content, it's hosting, it's an RSS feed. Now, I recommend that you get some artwork as well, but it's just three things. It's content, it's hosting, and it's an RSS feed. Now, content is your responsibility, okay? Content is what you have to do. And I'm going to be recording a little bit of content live in front of this audience, and you'll see exactly the way I do that. Content is yours. Hosting, bunch of people that do it. A bunch of people that do it. Some of my favorites, Libsyn. I'm hosting a bunch of my podcasts on Libsyn right now. Swung a deal with them. If you enter in the coupon code Paul, you get the first month free. So very, very cool. Libsyn is a place. Instant Customer is a place. Blueberry has stuff. A whole bunch of people have podcast hosting options. So content is from you. Hosting is from somebody else. You want to get a third party to do that for you. And then you need an RSS feed. And one of the things that happens with RSS feeds is in the early days of podcasting, people got to this point where they thought that they would have to do the RSS feed themselves, and people were learning how to do these things, and that's ridiculous. You want to have services that do it. So content, you. Hosting, and an RSS feed, somebody else. Now, how do we get things to sound good, and how do we do that music, and how do we do that kind of stuff? Okay, this is where... Oh boy, this is where this could get a little bit funky. All right, what we're going to do here is I'm going to record an episode of my podcast on the iPhone. Now, do I recommend recording your podcast on the iPhone? No, this is just a way for you to see how easy it is to do. And I think that's really, really important. So what we're going to do, if all goes well, I'm going to share with you my iPhone. Let me go back. Screen here. Okay. Oh boy, does this work? All right. We have my iPhone. Let's do this. And this is being shared. And I will go through. With everybody the tech that we used at the end of this, if you'd like to know it. I think it'd be kind of fun. All right. What we have here is we have a set of earbuds, and these are, what's the name of this brand? I got these from Tim Ferriss. They're wood reclaimed. It's like an $80 set of earbuds, and I'm gonna plug it into the phone here, and I'm using this program called Auphonic, which of course just disappeared from you, so you don't get to see that. So let's see what happened there. All right. Of course, when I tested everything for you guys. All right, looks like it works now. So you've got Auphonic. So what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to bring this back up. And again, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing my phone, and I'm doing my earbuds, and I'm using this cheap little microphone on the earbuds here, okay? And now we're going to go back to my iPhone so you can see what we're doing here. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Start a New Audio Recording. Click on that, and you can see we've got this recorder thing. And inside of this recorder thing is the ability for me to record. So we're going to record a quick episode of Thinking Out Loud. It's going to be really, really short. Thanks for dealing with me here on this. I'm going to hit the start button. Hey, this is Paul Colligan, and this is the Thinking Out Loud podcast, the podcast where I think out loud. To be honest, I'm not even sure what episode this is right now, but I'm recording this on a set of earbuds. What's interesting is I am doing this on a set of earbuds in front of a live audience who's watching me inside of YouTube. I'm doing this on my iPhone. It's not even the iPhone 6. It's my iPhone 5 Plus. And I'm using the Audacity program. I'm using the Auphonic program to record this. I'm using a cheap piece of earbuds. I'm doing this because, well, in the last episode of the podcast report, I spoke to how people seem to be making a lot of money these days, making podcasting complicated. And well, gosh darn it, it doesn't need to be complicated. I'm recording this on my phone. If you want to know how I did this, go ahead and head out to paulcolligan.com/how-to-podcast. It is about 15 minutes into the presentation, so you can go ahead and see how I did that. The music, the audio, edit, everything's done in that. That's all I want to do because I've got a live audience watching this. But thank you for listening to Thinking Out Loud. If you enjoy the Thinking Out Loud podcast, definitely do subscribe to it. We're in all of the podcast directories. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, so now what I've done here is not that exciting. There are a whole bunch of apps that record audio. That's not that big of a deal at all. But what's pretty powerful here is watch this. Okay, we're going to go back to the iPhone, and I'm going to give you guys the full screen. And we're going to go back. I'm going to hit check in the upper right-hand corner. That is going to record it. And then we're going to call this, well, here's what's fun. Let's go to my desktop. And I do this all the time. Let's see what episode this is. Episode 38. So we're going to call this one episode 39. All right, let's go back to the iPhone. Okay, so the name of the recording is 39. And I'd normally do more than this, but for letting everybody watch this, not that exciting at all. What we're going to do is we're going to upload and create a production. So what's happening now is this is uploading the media file to Auphonic. And Auphonic is a great company. We will take a look at that. You'll see how fast this is happening here. Very, very, very cool. Now, upload it, attach the production. Now, preset. I'm going to go to, you can see, I've got the different podcasts that I'm working with here. You can see I'm going to take the Thinking Out Loud podcast. Metadata. Podcasting. Let's at least get the caps right. Podcasting is easy. Or east. Fun doing this in front of a live audience. Thinking Out Loud episode number 39. Thinking Out Loud track number 39. You can see it's already got my cover photo. It's already got the genre. Started this in 2014 or 2013. So we're good to go. I'm going to click done. And I'm going to click the check button. Save and start production. Now you can see here what it's doing is it's starting the production. Now this is all happening in the cloud. And I will answer a bunch of questions after this. I know there are a bunch of these, but it's taking it over to the cloud. And it's running everything, pretty simply here. You can see it's processing it. And what it's doing is it's waiting, and what it's going to do is it's going to make an MP3 for me. And it's going to put it in Dropbox, which is going to come down to my computer, which will all make sense in a second. So I'm going to take a couple questions that have come through here. Special Ed IP, why are you using earbuds? Can't you see on the top that the sound's recording? The earbuds is actually just a slightly better microphone. That's all it is. And I record a lot of episodes of this when I'm in the car. Yeah, Steve said I was using that to record the earbuds. Special Ed says that makes sense. So you can see now we have the recording, and I want to show you something. Okay, you're going to go here. I'm going to do this near the mic. Hopefully this will work for everybody. All right, do this near the mic. It's spinning. Play in a second. And of course, there we go. Now you see how it did. It did that intro music for me. It did that da 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 thing that I that I have at the beginning of each one of my episodes. And you can see that here. Actually, I'll play, and you guys can see what's going on here. Okay, so. There it is. Now we have a recording. The question is how do we make that recording a podcast? And so far this has worked fabulously well, and I'm pretty proud of that. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to move over to Instant Customer. Now Instant Customer is one of the many services that we utilize. One of the many services that do podcasting. I work for Instant Customer. I'm not an employee. I'm a contractor. I have a large contract with them. Libsyn is good. As I said, I gave you guys the coupon for Libsyn. I couldn't even get ourselves a coupon for Instant Customer. So don't worry about that. Blueberry is good. A whole bunch of different folk, but Instant Customer is where I happen to be hosting this one. So don't take it as a blind endorsement, although it's been working great for me. So what we're going to do here is go back to the screen so you can see how this works. Instant Customer has a media center, and that's where we are. So we're going to click Add File. And what we're going to do is we're going to upload the file. And we're going to upload the file from... I'm going to give you guys some access to my... you can see here, it actually recorded episode 39 Thinking Out Loud for me. I'm going to click Open there. And then what's going to happen is that is going to upload that one to Instant Customer, and that is done. So it's been uploaded to Instant Customer. Then instead of Instant Customer, we have, create a new episode for Thinking Out Loud. Podcasting is easy. Recorded live. Thinking Out Loud. Episode number 39. Episode URL. Always fun watching people. Now, episode source. Inside of Instant Customer, you have the ability to use their media center, or you can go external. So one of the things is, one of the options you have is the power to use some of Instant Customer's interactive stuff, the trigger texting, that kind of thing. Some of the stuff that, Daniel, you've been asking me about, that's kind of how all this is done here. And going back, get rid of my picture here. You can see that we're going to grab the file. Oh, Oh, stink. I'm going to need to hit refresh because I, of course, recently uploaded this. So let's try that one again. Let's see if I can, nope, I can't. Podcasting is easy, recorded live, thinking out loud, number 39. Instant customer, you can see, thinking out loud, the most recent episode. And then episode keywords, recorded live. Now, following fields cannot be left blank. Episode description. Oh, yeah. Okay. Paul Colligan, during podcast day, showed the world how easy it is to record a podcast. I can go in and I can change that later if I want to. So it's been done, and you can see here the message is new episode added, and we're done. Now, what's cool is I'm going to change here. That's it. That is the podcast. If any of you subscribe to the podcast, the RSS feed has been updated immediately. What is an RSS feed? Doesn't matter. You know, all the technology nerd stuff that needed to happen was what was there. So I got into my phone. I used a pair of earbuds because it has a decent microphone on it. I uploaded it to the system that did processing for me. It took out some of the hum, took out some of the background noise, added the music, added the art, did all those things. And it's incredibly easy to use. I used Instant Customer as my host in this particular case because that's where this one happens to be hosted. But the fact of the matter is they can be anywhere you want them to be. And as a matter of fact, here I brought up Libsyn to show everybody, make sure everybody knows that I'm not, you know, prejudiced just towards one. Here's Libsyn, and in the exact same way, if I were to add a media file, you know, I could add that media file here, pull open my hard drive and upload a media file inside of Libsyn and publish it just as easily. What we have here in podcasting is pretty incredible. It's really simple, it's really easy, and it's something that, you know, any of us can do. So to go back to my notes, it's three things. It's content. I just created content. You saw that. It's storage online. Instant Customer does it. Libsyn does it. Blueberry does it. A whole bunch of people do it. And then it's an RSS feed that, when controlled by the right organization, automatically gets created for you. That's it. That's all you have to do. So I'm going to take a couple of questions here. Okay. Daniel says, yes, I've seen the free version, not as equipped as other free software, CamTwist Studio. I disagree. I find Wirecast to be incredibly robust and incredibly easy for me to use, but not that big of a deal. Daniel says I may consider using it since he's using that platform now. Very cool. Special Ed asked, he got answered. Steve answered it. Makes more sense. Felix from Potencio Millonario is there. Felix said hi. Felix says hola, Steve. Cal says, thanks, Paul. I got to go. I'll be checking back on you. Best wishes and all that, Cal. So very, very cool. All right. Okay. We're having a good time here. So I promised at the top of this that I would show how easy it is to podcast. Now, I could take my external microphone and I could have recorded that content inside of a free software program like Audacity, or which is free on Windows, which is free on, you know, Mac. There's even Linux, if anybody out there is still using Linux. You know, you can save it to Dropbox. Auphonic does all the work for you. In the particular case of me using Instant Customer, I had to download it and re-upload it to Instant Customer. In the case of groups like Libsyn and Blueberry, you've got great options for just automatic publication inside of something like Auphonic. Do you have to use Auphonic? No. Create the MP3 files however the heck you want to. I do like have somebody on my side who does the work for me, which is very, very cool. Fedrick says, does FeedBurner provide the RSS feed to iTunes? Great question. Of course, not everybody here knows what FeedBurner is. FeedBurner is a system that takes an existing RSS feed and cleans it up a little bit, beautifies it a little bit so that it works better inside of iTunes. Also provides some stats and provides some things behind the scenes that are kind of nice. In the particular case of Thinking Out Loud, I don't use FeedBurner. I want to make it raw. I want to make it outside of Instant Customer. I don't use it. In terms of the other podcast, the Podcast Report, I use FeedBurner for just tracking purposes and that type of thing. Podcasting for free on iTunes. Joe asks there, and I'm not quite sure what your question is. I'm assuming, Joe, what you're asking is how do you podcast for free on iTunes? You go to the iTunes directory and you say submit podcast, and you give them your feed, and a couple days later you're in the directory. I gave you a host. First month you got free at Libsyn if you'd like. Paul Colligan, or Paul as the coupon code. You can host. There are some third-party places that provide some limited free hosting if that's your deal. But Libsyn's $5 a month, and the stats and whatnot that you get from that is pretty incredible. There's no fee to pay to iTunes. There's no cost, and the great thing is you tell iTunes only once. Right now, iTunes is not going to have the latest episode because they don't check on a regular basis how the shows are doing or whatnot. But in a couple of hours, that'll be picked up by iTunes automatically. There's no fees. I've got an app in the App Store, and iTunes gets 30%. I've got some books over at Amazon and Kindle, and the fact of the matter is, they get 30% or 70% depending on what's doing. Podcasting costs me nothing to do. Or at least to get on the iTunes platform and to get it on all the other platforms. And it's really, really, really beautiful. Frederick says, so is the route Metalibsyn to FeedBurner to iTunes? That is one route. You don't have to have FeedBurner. Libsyn does a great job. If you want to use FeedBurner, you can. I don't find necessarily damage in it. I'm sure there are some podcasters here who would disagree with me. The fact of the matter is, FeedBurner, and I want to be very clear about this. FeedBurner, when it came out, was, everybody got so excited about it. Google bought it, which was exciting. And then pretty much right after that, all support for this bad boy pretty much stopped. And FeedBurner looks ancient, and it's the type of thing where, I'll be very honest with you, Google could drop it at any time. I think the political ramifications of them dropping FeedBurner would be really, really dangerous. But I don't want to make this about FeedBurner. Fact of the matter is, so many podcasts are managed by FeedBurner that if Google changes stuff, they're going to give people some warning time, and they're going to be able to fix it. Any good host will follow up and make sure that that's possible. But it's not complicated. You don't have to write RSS feed. You don't have to do WordPress plugins. You don't have to do installations of special software or anything like that. All you have to do, I'm getting a little thing here. Nope, looks like we're still broadcasting okay. Saw a little bit of a twinge on the replay here, but I'm going to turn off. No, I'm going to keep the replay going. It's easy. Felix says, I use Podbean. I've been very satisfied. Do you have an opinion on Podbean? Here's the thing. Let's make this bigger than tech, okay? If it works, use it. Okay? So, what about issue X? If it works, use it. Daniel J. Lewis just said, hey, FeedBurner Smartcast feature could damage your feed. That means it doesn't work. So don't use the Smartcast feature, okay? I am a huge fan of things that work, and you should be a huge fan of things that work as well. Some systems, they own the content. Don't do that. Own your own content. Some systems make it pretty hard to move your feed. Don't do that. But other than that, if the system works for you, it's good to go. Joe says, is it free for Stitcher and other distribution networks too? Yes, that's the beautiful part about all this. See, what happens is that same feed that you gave to iTunes is the feed that you can give to Stitcher, is the feed that you can give to TuneIn, is the feed that you can give to a bunch of networks. I will be honest with you, there are several podcast clients that, without permission and very surreptitiously grab the content from the iTunes directory. So if you're in the iTunes directory, you'll find that you are in things like Pocket Casts, which is actually my favorite podcast client. There are a number of great podcast directories. I think, Daniel, don't you have a resource for podcast directories? If you do, go ahead, jump that in. If I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. It's the bright lights of going live and that type of thing. But yeah, it's free to go on Stitcher. It's free to go on TuneIn. It's free to go on Pocket Casts. It's free to go on Overcast. It's free to go on all these things, which is what's so beautiful about podcasting. And it's what is so nice about podcasting. And it's what's so powerful about podcasting. You know, it's really funny. I'm doing a lot of work in Kindle. And actually, let's use that as a fun transition here. All right. Let me show you something we did, or something I attempted to do for Podcast Day. And I'm sorry about this, but okay. Amazon.com, you'll see here, I did a book called The Podcast Report Volume 1. And what I did was I took all the transcripts from the first 15 episodes of the podcast report, and I made them into a Kindle book. And I did this for a number of reasons. The number one reason that I did this is because some people like to read in that format. Some people want to support the show by promoting the show and that type of thing. Now, I actually released this Kindle book today, of all things, before I knew it was going to be Podcast Day. And I did it as a pre-release, and my intention was to be able to make it free today. All of that didn't work out. And so unfortunately, it's 99 cents today. Now, what's funny is enough of you picked this up that I'm already in the number 5 book in business skills. They moved that out of my view there. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. 99 cents isn't much, but I did promise this for free. And so the fact of the matter is tomorrow, this will go for free. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to pull that back up, but we were good to go. So Kindle, when I do stuff on Kindle, what's interesting is they get either 70% or 30%, depending on how I've run this stuff and how I've done this stuff. And podcasting doesn't do that. Now, obviously, there's no immediate revenue generation or something like that inside of podcasting, so it's not the best one-to-one example, but I can have the world downloading my content on whatever device they want, whenever and however they want, and it's pretty stinking cool. And that's the power of podcasting, and I want to I want to share that, and I just want you to realize that, because it is so beautiful and it is so neat, and it is exactly what you want to think about doing. I am known in a lot of circles as the profitable podcasting guy. You know, I'm known as the one about seeing a revenue stream for your podcast and that type of thing. I've helped a lot of people do that, but if you just got a message that you got to get out, this is a great way to do it. The episode before last, the podcast report, you know, iOS. I don't care if you're Android or Windows Phone or whatever you are, but by the end of this next month, by the end of October, we're going to have 500 million devices, 500 million devices. They're going to have the iOS with podcast built in for your show to get your content out to the world, and it doesn't cost you a dime. And then you've got all the other, you know, third-party systems like Android and that kind of stuff. But wow, this is so very, very, very cool. Here in the chat room, Daniel said podcast places. That's where you can submit your podcast, and it's a good resource. I've poked in on that. Very impressed by that. Do realize though, 800-pound gorilla, you know, 500 million devices iOS. So make sure you get into iTunes. Okay, make sure you do that first, and then go from there. So, all right, I'm going to close up some of the things that I wanted to chat about today. And if you've got questions, actually, there's a question way up at the top of this that I want to handle. You have my permission. As a matter of fact, you are absolutely encouraged to submit a question. And so look at this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to speak for a second, and I'm going to encourage you to submit your questions that we're going to answer here. Jonathan Chambers asked, and he asked this way before we went live with this one, and so I appreciate that one tremendously. That's not the screen I was looking for. All right, we're not going to do that screen yet. Let's go back here. There we go. Okay, Jonathan asked, is it best to only video podcast on YouTube and not audio? I've heard some saying doing audio only on YouTube is a big faux pas. Thanks. I do a lot of work on YouTube. I know YouTube well. YouTube has been very good to me. I have a number of books. I have a number of training programs on YouTube as well. Here's the deal. YouTube is a system that a lot of people try to gain. Okay? And they gain by getting offshore organizations to watch 5 seconds of a show, which counts as a view. And so you go to YouTube and you see how many viewers there were and that kind of thing. A lot of times these are bot views. And they're legit. They count as views, but let's be honest, they're not real. And so what has happened is YouTube has instituted now, they track how far along people watch your video. And this is audio, this is podcast, this is whatever it is. They monitor how far along they watch the video. And here's the deal. If 1 million people watch a video and they leave after 5 seconds, you're basically telling YouTube that the video stinks and there's no value to this video. So if you have a podcast that a lot of people look at and they leave because it's just audio, you are giving bad view times to YouTube, which means they're going to rank your video lower. Okay, so I've seen some cases where this works. I've seen some cases where this is viable, but I've seen some cases where it just doesn't really go well because people are expecting video on YouTube and they go from there. One of the things that you can do that's really interesting is there are a lot of people who record their podcast episode as a live cast. They use YouTube Live or they use Hangouts. And what you can do is take the video version of the recording. It's not that exciting. I mean, look at this face, okay? Face for audio. Okay, this is not that exciting, compelling video. You know, even if I put in a, something like this, it's just not the most exciting video in the world. And the fact of the matter is, YouTube is a medium for video. So give them video. And the fact of the matter is, if a couple people find your video on YouTube and then they come out and they subscribe to your podcast, very, very powerful. So there we go. Live Long says 5 must-know tips, strategies, and tactics, video and audio podcast. Look, number 1, make it easy. Number 2, get it out quickly. Number 3, focus on the content. Number 4, focus on the content. Number 5, don't worry about the tech. I mean, get what you need to do to get this out there, but focus on the content. Okay. Now, we've got a text message that came out. All right. Let's see here. We had one guy who asked, and this is really, really cool. Joe Talentino has a local TV show, and he wants to find his audience online, and his focus is his local station. And he wants to know how to do that. And here's the cool thing. This is one of the dirty little secrets of podcasting that seems to get lost on a lot of people. The fact of the matter is this, and it's really, really simple. Podcast subscriptions come when you tell somebody to subscribe. I know, obvious. Podcast subscriptions come when you tell someone to subscribe. If you go to iTunes right now, you'll see that the top podcasts are radio shows. Why are they radio shows? Because radio shows tell people to subscribe. At the end of every episode, subscribe to our show. Listen to us online. Listen to us on iTunes. And the fact of the matter is, see, if you have a local show, if you have local video, you can say, hey, you don't have to watch me Tuesdays at 6, or you don't have to watch me Wednesdays at 3, or whatever it is that you are. You can catch me whenever and however you want. If you use your local show to expand your audience, I can't watch local TV anymore. Life's too busy. Life's too crazy. But if you give me a chance to listen to the show, we're good to go. One of the local radio stations here in Portland, the drive time radio that I used to listen to all the time, I couldn't listen to anymore because of my world and my life. Well, they started making it available via podcast. You do the same thing. Take your local show, make it available via podcast. You'll get more listeners that way. It's a really, really cool strategy that not enough people use. And it is absolutely the best of both worlds. And it's very, very, very cool. All right, I'm going to keep going through the questions here. Passing through all this. Okay. FeedBurner, SmartCast. Okay. All right. Whoa, it's all coming through now. Okay. Boston Red. What about using Blog Talk Radio as your host? Goes back to my thing about who owns your content and what. Yeah, just look that up. Not a big fan of Blog Talk Radio. Look up Dave Jackson Blog Talk Radio. Dave has plenty of stuff there about there. Fact of the matter is, you got better options. You got easier options. They are trying to fix their game, but you just got better options these days. I will show you something that's very, very interesting. Just starting to play with these guys. If you're looking for a web-based podcasting option, take a look at these guys. Spreaker.com. Spreaker is an online production system that's really, really interesting. They have a whole social thing. It's a great way to produce podcasts. They sound a lot better. Same basic idea as Blog Talk Radio, except done a lot better and a lot more strategically. And what's really interesting about Spreaker is they have a relationship with iHeartRadio. And if your podcast does well on Spreaker, you can get it on the iHeartRadio app and still own your content, which is phenomenal. In a past episode of the podcast report, I actually went over that whole thing with Dave Jackson. He's seen some great success on it. And let's see. Yeah, there we go. It's episode 10 of the podcast report. And I don't know why I didn't call that episode 10. That's kind of funny. But take a look at that one. It's phenomenal. It's a great option, other than Blog Talk Radio. Stitchers in cars. Yes, Stitchers in cars, but you know what? TuneIn's in cars, and iHeartRadio's in cars, and Apple's getting into cars, and a lot of people are getting into cars. Stitcher's doing a great job. I'm a big fan of these guys, and if you see, I probably am promoting on Stitcher more than I'm promoting on iTunes right now, so not that bad of a deal, but we're good to go. Okay. Love to hear tips on growing the audience geographic area. Hit that. Smith, have you tried BossJock? Yeah, BossJock's great. Dave Manzanuto produced it. It's an app for producing your podcast. It's phenomenal. It's really done. It's real time, so you got to sort of have the real time mentality to do stuff. But it's very cool. It's ridiculously cheaply priced, and you can send stuff directly to. I know you can send stuff right to Libsyn from it. I think there's actually even a way to send stuff to Audacity if I'm not mistaken. So there we go. All right. When is a good time to start a podcast? Oh, Jason. Okay. When's a good time to start a podcast? I can't remember who said this. I'm going a little bit crazy here, but somebody asked, when's the best time to plant a tree? Best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago or today. Okay? Best time to start a podcast, 20 years ago or today. Hang up, start a podcast. Auphonic is free. First month with Libsyn is free with the coupon code Paul. Best time to start a podcast is right now. Audience, encourage this person to do the podcast. I'd really, really, really appreciate that. Okay. Daniel says, preach it, Paul. Beautiful. Boston says, Mr. Lewis is on iHeartRadio with the rest of us. Welcome, Mr. Lewis. Good job, man. It's pretty impressive to be on iHeartRadio. That's something I'm definitely going to be playing with. Paul, I do a local show, AM radio in Alabama, and I podcast it to over 78 countries. How cool is that? That's what we're looking at here. That's beautiful. Love that kind of stuff. Long live you. Good recording app to podcast from a Windows phone. I don't know. Sorry. Well, let's see. Let's do this. And is this going okay? I know this isn't as formal as I originally thought, but I've just been having too much fun with you guys. Let's take a look at Auphonic. Did they come up with a Windows Phone engine? I can't remember if they did. I don't think they did. Let's see. I don't want to spend too much time looking at this. All right, I'm not going to worry about that. I don't know. But here's the deal. Probably have. Okay. You want, there are two types of recording. There's lossless recording and there's lossy recording. Okay. Lossless recording is the best quality recording possible. When you edit and when you work with a podcast, you want to do something that records in lossless recording. So that'd be the number one thing I'd look for in your Windows Phone. That's usually the WAV file format. So I would look for lossless recording over MP3 or that type of thing. And then something that lets you publish online would be really, really viable as well. Okay. Oh, good question. Good question. Oh, this is stuff's coming through great. Frederick, can someone with a weak, thin, or scratchy voice make it with a podcast, or will it drive away people? It's flavor. Okay. A weak voice is flavor. A scratchy voice is flavor. It's something that you remember. Depends what your topic is about. Obviously, if it's the voices smooth as butter show and you're talking like this, that's not going to work. But I don't think you're going to drive away people. I've never not listened to a show because of the person's voice. And if you got a wacky voice, own it. And I think you'll be fine, personally. Ian says, start today. You can always make your show better. Lots of fun. Daniel says Aphonic is only iOS and Android. So, my joke is Windows Phone, all 5 of them. One thing you might want to consider doing is just getting yourself a iPod Touch. There we go. That's the one without the phone or that type of thing, and makes it easier. All right, Tyler has got a great question here, and let's hit that. I do have a couple more things I'm going to show you, but let's hit Tyler's question at least. Tyler says, I struggle with my avatar. And let me explain to you what an avatar is, because not everybody knows that concept. What happens a lot of times in podcasting is we just kind of flip on the mic and we start rambling. Well, here's the deal. Who cares? Who cares about what you're rambling about? The more you realize who cares what you're rambling about, the Thinking Out Loud show, I've got some pretty avid fans. I've got some people who really love me, and they're a ton of fun. And they love to share as I'm kind of working things out. They love to share as I'm thinking things out loud. As a matter of fact, Fred Castaneda, who is on this webcast right now, he's my avatar for the show. And whenever I record an idea, I'm like, is this something Fred would be interested in? And if it's the type of thing that Fred is interested in, then awesome, great, I'll record it. If it's not the type of thing Fred's interested in, then maybe I won't record that episode. Fred is my avatar. The podcast report, my avatar for the podcast report is a guy named Frank. And Frank is a podcaster who's trying to see revenue, who's trying to get better, who's trying to understand what the trends are, and he wants somebody to come in quickly, give him the facts, tell him where the revenue is, tell him where the money is. No BS, no rambling, no stories from home or what I ate for lunch or that type of thing. Frank is to the business kind of guy, and Frank is my avatar. And so there have been episodes of the podcast report that I've done where I'm like, Frank would enjoy this, so I do without it. And so Frank's my avatar. So Tyler says, I struggle with my avatar. My e-commerce site has 500 different products, most of which have different audiences. I want a podcast. I don't know which of these audiences to speak to. Well, here's the deal. Speak to your biggest audience, okay? An e-commerce site that has 500 different products, I'll tell you this right now, Amazon doesn't have a podcast. Why? Because they have all these different products. They tried some things. They haven't done that well. An e-commerce store with 500 different products, you're going to need more than one podcast if you are going to podcast. So find your biggest audience and speak to that. And what is your biggest audience? Your biggest audience is what sells the most. If you're in a situation where you've got 500 products and each one sells one a month or something like that, podcasting's not the format for you. And but just find your biggest audience and go from there. Daniel says, I see some audio recording apps for Windows Phone. They can upload to Dropbox, but nothing to Libsyn. Dropbox is a great place to start. Chris says, happy podcast day. Just learned about this live stream. Very cool, John. Thank you, John, from the Chris Break Show. Having a good time here. I've been answering questions. Keep them coming in. I'm having a good time. At some point, I want to eat dinner. But the fact of the matter is, I love this kind of thing, and the tech seems to be working pretty well. Looks like everything from my stats are running well. and we will go from there. Oh, this is an interesting one. Boston Red here. More Android phones than Apple iPhones and iPads in use. Yes, there are, Boston Red, but Boston Red, here's the deal. For every one Android download, there are 5 point something iPhone downloads. Now, you got an opportunity in Android to get an audience, but the audience is there very heavily in iOS. And here's the deal. I don't care how they listen to my show. I don't care at all how they listen to my show. If they're listening on Windows, I might make fun of them, but they're listening to my show. If they're listening on BlackBerry, they're listening to my show. If they're listening on Android, they're listening to my show. Fact matters, biggest audience with a bullet is iTunes. And so I'm going to go there first. But after that, man, anybody who wants to take my stuff, God bless them. Please, please, please take my stuff. And one of the very first podcasts I did was a show called Marketing Online Live. And we did a thing way back in the early days where we asked everybody how they listen to the show. And some people said, I download it and I go for a walk on the beach. One guy said I go for a walk with my dog. A lot of people walking, a lot of people commuting. But I remember I got this one. Mr. Smith has me burn the podcast to CD and I give it to his driver and he listens to it on the way home. I don't know what the driver does with the CD after he's done listening with it, which is phenomenal. Mr. Smith, don't know who he is, but he's getting my podcast on CD. God bless him. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I put the podcast report up as this Kindle book. Okay, fact of the matter is, if you want to listen to, put that one there. If you want to get the podcast report as a transcript, great. Maybe you don't have audio. Maybe you can't hear. Maybe you want to get the content that way. I don't care how people get my podcast, and that's part of the power of what we've got here. That's the power of what you've got. So make sure when you do your podcast, get it in front of as many people as is possible, as many ways as is possible. All right, let's go back to the screen here. Aline says, any predictions? I said on Facebook, have not seen them yet. I've been prepping for this. Ronald, what do I know about Audello? I don't. That's okay. There are a lot of things I don't know about. So there we go. All right, let's clean up some of the browsers I've got. So National Podcast Day. Didn't do this originally as Podcast Day. I planned this before I knew it was Podcast Day, but it was such serendipity that it was really, really cool to be part of. And the guys who did it just did an excellent thumbs up job. So cannot support them enough, could not appreciate that enough. And beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Frederick says, damn, Paul, just discovered you tonight. I'm sold. Subscribe to Thinking Out Loud. I want more Paul Colligan. Thank you for tonight. Thank you, Frederick. Subscribe to the podcast report as well. If you're into podcasting, I think you're going to love that show just as much. All right, I'm going to clean up some of the tabs here, reminders to what I was doing. Stitcher, let's see, we talked about Facebook, iTunes, Instant Customer, Libsyn. We talked about Spreaker, very interested with these guys. Again, the podcast report's going to be free tomorrow, but if you want to pick it up today for just 99 cents, I'll be interested to see what happens. The fact that I've made it to number 3 in business skills is just mind-blowing. I've told most people not to pick it up until tomorrow, but that's pretty cool. Thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate that. Oh, look at that. That's the stream within a stream. It's Streamception. Gary Leland. Oh, this is cool. Okay, so my buddy Gary has a... Gary has a iPad magazine about podcasting that it goes to the whole Pottertainment thing. It's more to the entertainment side of things, but he's got some really killer authors and writers in there. And I asked Gary to do 2 things. Number one, I asked Gary to give us a commercial, but then I asked Gary to give us a deal. So I want to give you a quick commercial for Pottertainment magazine, and you're going to see what we're going to do for you here. So let's play Gary's commercial. All right, that went bad. Let's try the commercial again. All right, that was the commercial for Pottertainment magazine. Here's the deal. I don't remember what it is per month, but if you use the code Paul Colligan, Gary is giving you 3 free months, which is pretty cool. So Paul Colligan, and we are good to go. Aline Smith says I burn 1 or 2 CDs every day before I go to work, so she's not the only one who listens to stuff on podcasting or listens to stuff on CD. So that was Pottertainment. I wanted to share that with you. The Podcast Expert Blueprint. I have a program. It's a high level. I'm going to stress this. It's a high level, very expensive, but very worth it course on podcast monetization and putting together. I'm proud of the course. I'm thrilled of the course. We sell it a little bit differently, and it's there. If you're interested, you can head out to the podcastexpertblueprint.com. We are actually doing a thing where we sell the Podcast Expert Blueprint as a invitation only kind of thing. And so if you would like more information about the Podcast Expert Blueprint, you can go ahead and text that number, and we will go from there. And what I want to do is, we actually did an event for the Podcast Expert Blueprint people, heading some higher level stuff about podcasting. And what I want to do is I want to do that right now. So where did I put, give me a second here. There it is. Here we go. Oops, wrong screen. Okay, there we go. This is a presentation I did for the Podcast Expert Blueprint inside. It was sort of our catch-up presentation. And there was some stuff that I wanted to share with you guys inside of it, because it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a way to think of podcasting that maybe you haven't done before. So let's go back to the slides, and let's go from there. All right. I covered the site, the schedule, email, and bonuses. Not much value to you. The pillars of podcasting is going to be the main part of the presentation today. The reality of live, Paul's promise. One of the things I do here is live can get wonky. Live can get very wonky. I am thrilled with how well this broadcast has gone, but live can get wonky. And one of the things I do is simply I record everything I do, and if for some reason things go bad, I will re-record it. And I have had to re-record things before, and just sort of the nature of the beast. But I always make that promise. And if you ever teach a course or you do anything like that, make that same kind of promise. It just puts everybody at ease, because they don't necessarily know what to do and where to go. One of the things the students were asking about was the different sites. Kajabi is where we have the training. We have groups inside of Kajabi. I have a help desk. And I have paulcolligan.com, which is just the marketing stuff. All right, let's get to the meat here. All right, this is for you, Fred. One of the things that we did in the very early days of podcasting was used to do a call and response thing with the audience. Who the media? No, you the media. See, who the media? You the media. And I always had a fun time with this, because we would get the audience going back and forth on this. And so really it's who the media, and let me go over here, and who the media, you the media, who the media, you the media. And this is one of the cool things is we are in a situation now where you are the media, and it's pretty cool. So with that said and done, let's talk to the 3 pillars of podcasting, because this is really important stuff. We tend to put all of our focus on podcasting. And as you saw earlier, I did a podcast ridiculously quickly using nothing but my phone. And then we got this Frederick Fitchman guy who says, "Damn, Paul, I just discovered you tonight. I'm sold. I subscribed." It didn't take me a lot of work to get the podcast. The technology of podcasting's not the hard part. Podcasting has 6 pillars, and I just wanted to share these with you. Okay, pillar number 1 is plan. Plan your podcast. This is very important, and this is very big. I had people who came to me Paul, I bought my high def camera. What should I podcast on? I've made my studio. What should I podcast on? Don't do that. Plan first. Figure out who your audience is. We spoke earlier to the avatar. Figure out who your audience is. Figure who your avatar is. Figure out what the message is. Really, it's market, message, money, media is really the 4 steps. And a lot of people don't think about this, and the first pillar of podcasting is this plan. Who is your audience? And then what kind of message do they get? We had that guy earlier who said, I got a store that sells 500 different things. Who's my audience? Well, either there's a group of people who buy a lot of stuff and you got that audience, or it's just people who happen to stumble across, you don't really have an audience. Either way, just figure out who your audience is and then build it. Build a title for that audience. The reason I call the podcast report, because I want people who are interested in podcasting, who want to report, who just don't want fluff, who don't want stories, don't want that kind of thing. They want a report. And we build the title for that. So plan, my audience is podcasters who are looking to get serious about podcasting. The message and format is you can get serious about podcasting. You don't have to do the old thing the old ways. And the title is the podcast report, and the frequency is every week. And the hosting, that particular one is on Libsyn because of the stats. I got a little bit of integration on the back end with Instant Customer for trigger texting and that kind of thing. But that's the planning process. And you'll be sad. It's really kind of scary how many people go out and podcast without ever going through the planning process. We used to joke that it was fire, aim, ready that a lot of people did. A lot of people just put their podcast out there and they never thought what they were doing. And it just got in the way and it got kind of sad. And it's not something that you want to do. So plan your podcast first. Then produce your podcast based on the plan. This is what I call ease casting. And this is what, this thing was about and what the earbuds was about. Make it easy to do your podcasting. In some cases, you're sending it out to an editor. The great thing, we spoke earlier, the Windows phones, getting an audio, sending it to somebody, having somebody else edit for you. If you are not the type of person who can edit, editors are cheap. But two really, really important things: be authentic and be predictable. Do that in your production and you're going to be in a really, really cool place. Sorry about the chair squeaking there. The third thing inside of the pillar, or the third pillar, is promotion. You see, a lot of people have this, I call it the Kevin Costner theory of podcast production. If you build it, they will come. It's a lie. It's not true. It doesn't work. You got to figure out how you're going to promote your podcast. Now, the great thing is you can let them promote you. iTunes. Everybody gets all crazy. How do I get on New and Notable? How do I get on New and Notable? How do I get on New and Notable? iTunes has an area called New and Notable where they represent podcasts that are new and notable, hence the term. And New and Notable, all you have to do is have a new podcast. And Notable, in what we've seen, is about 10 subscriptions. Is about all you need to be new and notable. And with that, you've got Apple promoting you. And the thing is, you don't just have Apple promoting you. Check this out. We're going to go back here to this screen from the desktop here. But check this out. Okay, I'm going to go to Google. And we'll type in the podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do Thinking Out Loud. Okay, check this out. iTunes. Thinking Out Loud. Apple.com. My Apple.com is promoting me. This is an SEO dream. And if you look at Apple.com promoting me, Apple.com is sending people right to my podcast. Sending right to my podcast website, which is phenomenal. Having Apple with all of their market valuation and all these things promoting my podcast for people searching for that term is absolutely phenomenal and is absolutely amazing. So let them promote you. Let Apple promote you. Let the other podcast directories promote you. You're good to go. You definitely want to be social. You definitely want to be out there working with your audience and that type of thing. And then you want to reward sharing. Encourage people to share. Encourage people to promote. I've seen everything from Amazon gift cards to contests to that type of thing. But definitely reward your audience for promotion. It's very, very powerful. And then another thing you want to do is you want to build an email list as part of promotion. A lot of people don't realize that if they come to your podcast, they can subscribe. And even if they subscribe, they don't necessarily listen to all the episodes. Another one of the dirty little secrets of podcasting. But if they subscribe to an email newsletter, you can catch up with them every episode. And so, what's let me give you an example of that, because I think that's really, really important here. See, instead of thinking out loud, text your name and email address to 503-446-6057. Get the latest information about the Thinking Out Loud podcast. Be inside of the Inside Out Loud tribe. If you look at the podcast report inside of iTunes, search for this, and here I am at iTunes. Check this out. My phone number for my show is right there. And not only is the phone number for the show right there, but inside of all those iOS devices that have phones on them, they can click right in iOS and call. And you can call that number, 503-894-1290. You can call that number and leave your name and email address and what episode you want to get transcripts of. You enter onto my newsletter. And it's not a spam thing. It's not a... it's not one of those things where, you're trapped in an endless performing hell of emails coming through. I follow canned spam because I don't want to send people email who don't want to get email. I want to send people email who want to get email. I mean, I don't know, to me that makes sense. But by having an email list, I see my biggest bump in subscribers. I see my biggest bump in listens whenever I send to the email list. So pillar 1 is plan. Pillar 2 is produce. Pillar 3 is promote. Those are the first 3 pillars of podcasting. Now, when you do these things live, you're about a minute delayed. And so if I ask for questions, you don't want to pause for a minute. But what I'm going to do is there was one question, or there's one comment here that was made, and we'll take that. And then if there's any other questions about the first 3 pillars, go ahead and post those questions, and then we can hit the next 3 pillars if you are interested. Well, no, we're going to do it anyway. I guess if you're not interested, hang up. Okay. Frederick says, future podcasting is wrapping up all the way. Broadcast radio is really going to be hurt by podcasting. Was in broadcasting for over 40 years. The glory days are over. AM radio is hurting these days. AM radio's hurting. Broadcast media is hurting. The middleman's hurting. But here's the thing. The smart people, the talent inside of AM radio, and it sounds that you, Frederick, are one of them. The smart talent is just moving to podcasting. So there are a lot of station owners who are hurting. There are a lot of shareholders who are hurting, but the smart broadcasters and the smart entertainers are not hurting, and I find that to be really cool. I'm a big fan of Uber. I don't know if you're familiar with Uber, but it's a car sharing system. It's basically taxi for the new generation, and what's happening, and taxi as in the service, not the old 70s sitcom. But what's interesting is taxis, they're cheaper for me. The driver makes more money. The only person who doesn't necessarily do so well is the taxi station owner. And you got to change with the times. And so there are a lot of radio stations who are not changing with the times, but there is a lot of talent who's moving from there, who has the production talent and that kind of stuff, to do tremendously well. And it's just fun to watch. All right. Looks like there's no questions about the first 3 pillars, or at least none coming through right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the slides. I'm going to pull these up here, and let's go to the next 3 pillars. And these are key, and these are the pillars that a lot of folk forget about, and this is where a lot of things gets damaged. Pillar number 4 is manage. People do these podcasts, and you ask a podcaster, how's it going? I don't know. Oh, that's so sad. We have stats now. We have numbers now. We can track these things. We can track downloads. Through Stitcher, we can track how long people are listening. One of the things you'll see inside of the podcast report, and I do this on purpose, and it's something that I recommend everybody do. If you look inside the podcast report, so I think, do I have it in this description? I don't think so. This one wasn't necessarily updated. Let's go to this one. By the way, they're all clean. Just sometimes people forget to, my director forgets to do that. Let's see. There we go. To get a transcript of this episode, and there we go. There we go. Sorry about that. Fun to watch people scroll. To get a transcript of this episode, send hashtag EP15 to 503-897-1290. You know, what I'm doing is I'm managing the show. I'm figuring out what it is that people like. Okay. I love, I find out what it is that people are doing, and I respond to that. See what's working, what isn't working. If I do the shows that are working more, I'm going to see better results. There is one episode of the podcast report that got more transcript requests than all of the other episodes combined. Think about that. One episode, I've done 15 episodes. I'm not going to count today's episode. I've done 15 episodes. One of them has got more podcast transcript requests than all the rest of them. What does that tell me? That tells me that I need to do more episodes like that one. You see, I'm managing. I figured out what's working. I figured out what isn't working. I figured out what I can do faster, what's better, and I'm at a good place. Very, very powerful. The next step, the next pillar is multicasting. And this we spoke to a little bit in terms of what to do about YouTube. And what's really interesting here, there's a question in chat. What are your thoughts about SoundCloud? Multicasting is get your content everywhere. Get your content everywhere. A lot of people forget about this. A lot of people don't think about this at all. Joe says, what do you think about SoundCloud? Put your content on SoundCloud. What do you think about Kindle? Put your content on Kindle. What do you think about YouTube? Put your content on YouTube. You own this content. Put it sticking everywhere. Okay? Everywhere, and automate the process so you're not spending all day long submitting to this and submitting to this and submitting to this, but go everywhere. SoundCloud as the initial platform is really, really tiny. I bowed to Dave Jackson and some of his results there. I haven't seen good results. He hasn't seen good results. It's kind of sexy and it's kind of pretty, but it's all about working. We're all back to the manage. What's working, what isn't. Dave Jackson looks at his numbers and knows that tiny percentage is coming from SoundCloud. I look at my numbers and I've even got a smaller percentage, but Dave's got a bigger piece, so his numbers are better, and so I'm not too worried about SoundCloud right now. But I multicast. I put it everywhere. Live is an option. Recording your podcast live in front of an audience using something like Hangouts on Air, like they do at the Podcast Roundtable, or YouTube Live, like I do. Live is a great option. There is a certain group who will attend live. Those of you who are watching this because you are the type who likes to watch things live. And I get it. There's a certain energy in watching things live. Some of you signed up for a text message to be reminded when I went live with this. So go live. It's very, very, very cool. All right, back to here. Actually, I want to go back to the slides because what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub my nose, and I'm not going to let you guys watch that on video because it's kind of embarrassing. So, multicast, book casting, social casting, mobile casting, all these options are there. Put your content in books, put your contents all over social media, put it all over mobile. Use automation, definitely automate the process, for goodness sakes. I turned myself on mute while I readjusted so you didn't have to hear those loud noises. But mobile casting is great. Automation is there. Couple questions which I'll hit in a second there, and then finally merging, and merging is huge. Merging is make this part of your platform. I'm Paul, and I do the podcast report, but the podcast report is part of my platform. The podcast report is a podcast that I do. Many of you are watching this as a result. Many of you are watching the replay as a result. The book is part of my platform. The website's part of my platform. People inside of the Podcast Expert Blueprint are part of the platform. I'm not a guy who has a day job who has a podcast. I have a podcast that is part of my day job. And this is the merging process that's incredibly powerful and something that you definitely want to consider doing. So make it part of your platform. Make it a huge slice of your revenue pie. And then when you do that, some really, really interesting things happen. What happens is it becomes your favorite part of the week. I don't go, oh, the podcast report, got to get another episode out. No, this is what's building my business. I'm on the consulting side, building my business on the podcast blueprint side. It's pretty stinking cool. And it's a lot of fun. So those are the 6 pillars. Fred says, ISYOT is the law of multicasting. Yes, it is. ISYOT stands for, I've seen you out there. You know, man, if you see me in Kindle and you see me in Amazon and you see me on iTunes and you see me on Android and you see me on YouTube and you see me on SoundCloud and you see me on social and you see me on Facebook and you see me on at some point, like, okay, I got to take this guy seriously. He's everywhere. And very, very powerful. Joe Talentino, resources for automating the multicast. That's part of why I work so well with Instant Customer. They do that tremendously well. They're the only ones right now who automate all of that. There's some other elements to it. You could take a look for video distribution tools, but Instant Customer is the one I'm using. Again, client of mine, so maybe I'm prejudiced. Actually, I'm probably very prejudiced, but that answers that question there. All right. Okay, 3 things I learned along the way. Produce your podcast. It doesn't matter what your podcast is about if nobody is listening to it. I've had people, students, who I'm pondering my podcast. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm waiting. The fact of the matter is, if they don't listen, it doesn't matter. So produce it. Partner, don't do it all. Groups are great. It's National Podcast Day. It's absolutely phenomenal that everybody's here. You don't have to do it by yourself. There's some stuff that you do better. It'd probably be better for me to get a producer for these types of shows. So learn from that. Production can get lonely. When you get somebody else who's doing it, you're good to go. I do have an editor who does the podcast report editing for me, and that's a good thing. And then, outsourcing. Outsource. It's really, really smart to do. And it's really, really powerful, and it's really, really viable to do. Outsourcing goods. Kid sourcing's good. Some editing doesn't need to be that complicated. You can have your kid do it. My 14-year-old does a lot of my editing for me. The Fiverr Fib. There is a website called Fiverr. Fiverr, Fiverr.com. 2 R's in Fiverr. Fiverr is a website of people that will do things for you for $5. Some of them will do editing. Some of them will do audio. Some of them will do podcast art, that type of thing. There's this idea that you can just throw $5 and fix all your problems. It's a fib. Sometimes you can get a great deal, but you get what you pay for, and you got to be careful there. But certainly consider automating the process of outsourcing. All right, let's go back over here. Freeform. Yeah, that was for the group. It's just not going to make a lot of sense. Inside the group, inside of the podcast expert blueprint, a lot of people try to get social. They're not quite sure where to do that. I tell everybody inside of the Podcast Expert Blueprint, there's a whole area to be social. Be social. List your social. No matter what you're doing at your website, at your blog, at your podcast, let everybody know where you can be social. I myself, I've got a profile inside of it, but like I taught earlier, it's paulcolligan.com/YouTube/Twitter/Facebook/Pinterest. I do all these things because, gosh darn it, I should be promoting me, not necessarily the other guys. And then finally, for us internally, the podcast blueprint is something that we just use in social media. Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense for the non-students. All right, your show, I can't wait. And this is something I really want to speak to. Nothing is more thrilling than listening to, being part of somebody who launches a show because of my training. And it's just an absolute ton of fun. So that was some training for the Podcast Expert Blueprint. Fact of the matter is, it's not cheap. It's very high profile. We do things like there's some consulting. My artist develops your work, develops your podcast artwork. And anyway, it's a high level thing. If you are interested in joining the Podcast Expert Blueprint, it's not one of these things open all the time. We do batches at a time, and basically open it for a certain amount of time. First people to send in the cash, come in and join the program. Okay, that's the end of that commercial. Couple of questions that are done. Dave Harvey is famous for Harvey's Headlines. What are you famous for? I'm famous for teaching people how to make money with their podcast. So there. The Lotus Cast. How do I podcast for money? Lotus Cast, it's all back to what I said in terms of the planning. You got to figure out exactly who your audience is. Who's your market? That's first. What's your message? What are you going to tell them? Where's the money? And then where's the media? That's how it works. I am not a big fan of advertising on your podcast, because advertising on your podcast really, to me, is one of the lowest formats of $40 for 1,000 downloads for something generic. I mean, sometimes it works, but I'm going to see some cash from the transcripts from the book, which are probably going to pay me a better revenue stream than just advertising on the show would pay me. But the market, well, let's take a look at the Podcast Expert Blueprint. The market, podcasters. The message is, if you do it right and you do it intelligently, there's some money to be made. The media, or the money, is in the selling of the course. The media is in the selling of the some consulting services that I do for some people. That's where the money in, and the media is obvious in my particular case. It's podcasting. Now, back in the early days, I had it's really funny. Podcasting's gone through stages. Right now, one of the fastest growing podcasting areas is comedy, which is really kind of funny, kind of interesting. But there was a phase when the number one podcasting revenue stream was, believe it or not, was language training. How to speak Spanish, how to speak Japanese, how to speak Italian. And it's really funny because people are like, well, how do I make money on this? Well, I'll tell you this. Berlitz is not going to pay to advertise their paid course on how to speak Spanish if you're teaching how to speak Spanish for free. They figured out what their market was. People wanted to learn Spanish. They figured out what their message was. I'll teach you how to speak Spanish. But they didn't figure out what the money was. And that's what you have to do. Now, that's how you profit from podcasting. You don't have to profit from podcasting. Somebody in here said, the Lotus Cast said you profit in fun. If that's how you want to make some money, go ahead, make some money profiting in fun. It's awesome. It's a great way to distribute. Like I showed you earlier, it's amazing to get this information out to the world. It's really incredible. But if you want to see some revenue from this, that's not a bad thing either. And it's really, really viable, and it's really, really cool. So I enjoy that. All right. That is the training from the Podcast Expert Blueprint. If you'd like to join me, if you're interested in more, you can head out to the podcastexpertblueprint.com, podcastexpertblueprint.com. There's a link for the podcast report. You can text your name and email address for more information, only if you're interested. This is entirely free, so have some fun there. All right, let's go back entirely to the screen. All right, Podcast Expert Blueprint. Full access to all the courses, 4 bonus Q&A sessions, 2 one-on-one sessions. My designer designs your podcast art done. Auphonic, I'm a big fan of these guys for production and that type of stuff. Very, very, very cool. iTunes, just amazing that they link to my website. Boy, if you from an SEO standpoint, a podcast that just for the link from Apple is tremendous. Okay, just from the link from Apple is tremendous. And just Apple recognizing that you exist, that you're an expert in certain things and that kind of thing. It's very, very, very cool and very, very, very fun. So definitely do that. Podcast report as well. Okay, that's it for my browser stuff. Let me check my notes. If you got any additional questions, please go ahead and put them there in the Q&A. I would love to comment. I'm going to check my final notes and to see if there's anything else I wanted to cover today. I think we got it all. You saw Gary's magazine, had fun, Auphonic, Spreaker, Libsyn, Instant Customer, Q&A. I think we are all there, so that's fun. All right. Thank you for joining me on this one. It is a blast to have you in here, and it is a blast to have you. If you got any more questions, go ahead and take a look at that. I'll answer them the best that I can. This is fun. This is fun. and I'm going to remove some stuff here that maybe isn't necessarily appropriate for the family audience that we'd like to do here. Ian Smith says, I wish we could have some traffic stats from the iTunes page. Why can't you have traffic stats from the iTunes page? I have traffic stats from the iTunes page. Any good stats program will tell you how many people clicked over from your page. And remember, the clicks from the page is one thing, but just simply showing people that I'm there, they might not ever click immediately from iTunes over to the website, so you're going to get some stats there, but just being at iTunes. Remember, you can say, if you have a podcast, you can say as seen at apple.com. Okay? The podcast report here, let's go back to it. This is apple.com. I have all authority to say as seen at apple.com. The podcast report. Anybody who's got a podcast report has the ability to do that as well. And it's something that I certainly recommend that you consider doing. So definitely track it from your podcast, your web browser stats, but realize people who come out to it might not visit through as well. I was at an event it's going to come to me. Been a long day. Oh my goodness. The big report, Huffington Post. There we go. Arianna Huffington once said, ubiquity is the new exclusivity. Okay. Ubiquity is the new exclusivity. Ubiquity is the new exclusivity. What does that mean? Okay. Being everywhere is being exclusive. And you look at people like, Justin Bieber. Okay. Justin Bieber is at iTunes for his music. Is it YouTube for his videos? Is it Amazon for his life story, books, biographies, that type of thing? Is all over Instagram for his pictures, Twitter for his comments. Same thing with Lady Gaga and that kind of stuff. They are everywhere, and you should do and would want to do the exact same thing. I mean, where is traffic coming from going to that page on the iTunes website? Eileen asks. It's coming from search. Here's the thing, Eileen. Let's go back here. Here's the deal. When people type, they hear that Paul Colligan podcast. They hear that Paul Colligan has a podcast. Look at this. Number one's my site. Number two is Amazon, YouTube, plus, but iTunes podcast, thinking out loud. I mean, it comes up on the first page. My iTunes page is coming up in results for people who search about me. And of course, if somebody wants to search, even more so specifically, boy, if they type Paul Colligan podcast report, that's going to come up even higher. My blog is going to come up first. Amazon's going to come up first, but the podcast report comes up as number 3. Podcast report is coming before all these other things. It's amazing the traffic that's coming from iTunes. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay. You have to be an iTunes partner with Apple to get stats directly from them. Yes, but you don't get referrals or anything in advance. Yeah. And you mentioned creating an avatar based on individual listener. How do you actually decide the person was typical? Trial and error. Great question, Francis. The avatar, let's see, here's the deal. The avatar is the person who has made you money, okay? Or the person that you've seen the best results from, okay? Fred has been a student for a long time. I've seen great revenue from Fred, and I appreciate it. And as a result, Fred holds a special place in my heart. And it's cool because when I perform it, I ask, would Fred like it? Would Fred enjoy it? And I do that. It's very cool. For the podcast report, I know, not a lot of podcasters. A lot of podcasters are in this for the fun of it, for the entertainment of it. Great. Not all of them are here from the revenue generation or that kind of thing. I'm absolutely fine with that. And but the fact of the matter is that's my avatar. And so what happens is I build content for people who want to see revenue. And I build the type of stuff where they see revenue. And the great thing is, I think to this Frank character, but I'll tell you this, I hinted earlier that one of my episodes saw, more than all the other episodes combined for the people who texted in for the transcripts. That one was about, I'm not going to say which one it was, but it was a directly related financial one. So I know that I'm going in the right place and the right direction. Paul, if I'm sending folks to that page from social media and different blogs, I'd like to know which is sending the most traffic. Yeah, you're not going to get traffic stats from iTunes.com. That's just the way it works. And but don't be worried about that. We're about downloads. worry about subscribers, and worry about opt-ins, and worry about customers, and worry about purchases, and worry about those things, because that is where we want to go. All right, I'm at 90 minutes, and I didn't want to go much longer than that. This has been a blast. I originally wasn't going to make this available afterwards. I'll just set this up for replay, and it will be fun to see what people do and how people enjoy that. If there's any major questions coming in, I will try to answer those really, really quickly, but I do want to close this up for the day. This has been a blast. This has been fun to do. I did everything with Wirecast for YouTube. I did it with the free version, which you can use for Hangouts. You can also use for YouTube Live. I like the interaction here inside of YouTube, and we're good to go. Let's see. A couple people came up. Let's see. Lowe's Cast, The Last Airbender, don't know what you mean. Chris, can you look at Chris Blake's show? I'm sorry, I can't at this point, Chris. Maybe we'll do that at a later show. Dave, what do you guys, something beyond generic use iTunes garbage? Dave, generic iTunes garbage, it's 5 out of every 6 downloads for podcasts, so it's not garbage. I love my Android users. I've got an Android tablet right there, but when it comes to straight numbers, iTunes is the 800-pound gorilla, and that's okay. I like the presentation. Will you show the slides somewhere? Yeah, you got the whole thing. You're good to go. You'll have access to all this. You can replay it at any point. So thanks so much, everybody. This has been fun. With that said and done, I'm going to let everybody go. Have a good night. Thanks, guys. Bye.